Westport, and I'd been up and down the coast as a child, been here as a child, Charleston, Tauranga Bay in Westport was a beautiful place to grow up. Kayaking on the river, swimming, climbing in the hills. So I loved the bush and I loved the rivers. About 1974, when I lived down the road, and we had our own little commune there, and that's when I met everybody. And I only stayed there about 2 or 3 years before going back to Christchurch to work. Trained as a biologist, and that's why my first foray into living a life on the land proved a wee bit lacking for me, because I had a burning desire to do something with my training. When I first went back to Christchurch, I spent a year on a building site, and then I spent 2 years at the Christchurch Star as a proofreader. Then I scored a job at Christchurch Hospital as a research scientist, and that led to 12 years in immunology. And then I took my kids away to live north of Picton in a bit of wilderness to get them out of the city. And when I came back, I spent the next 20 odd years with a horticultural company manufacturing biological products for plants. After 40 years of living in the city, I wanted to live somewhere else, like here. Billy rang me up one day and said I should buy his old batch, because the person who owned it was wanting to sell it and had been trying to sell it for quite a while. And so I rang her up and said I'd like to come and have a look at it, and she said the key was on the top of the fridge and make myself at home. So I stayed the weekend and decided that this was going to be my next move, about 8.5 years ago. It was a lovely little batch, but the fire was rusty and needed to be replaced. The roof was rusty and needed to be replaced. The deck was too small and needed to be extended, and so I did those things. I was keen to live with a group of people and do things together and do things for other people, and meeting other people. And the West Coast was a great place for that, with the Barrytown Hall having its music events every couple of weeks, and I got to meet a huge range of people who used to go to those gigs, and it was absolutely wonderful. And also, having grown up in Westport, I also had lots of friends still there, and a huge advantage to come back to a place where you are already known. I was asked by Trev and Tony if they could use this place as a jam space. They used to have a jam at the tavern in Punakaiki every week, and when that proved too small, they wanted a bit of a freer atmosphere and a larger spot to do it. So I set up the PA system, and we've done it every Wednesday night since. The markets, they used to happen once a year on Waitangi Day and on the old bridge, and then when the engineers said that the bridge was no longer suitable for having people on it, we thought about having them down at the what is the market space now, at the cow bale. So Billy and I were the only ones who were really interested, so we got it together and put the word out there, did posters. Miriam actually did the first poster, Miriam, Ross's daughter, and we still use her poster. When we first started, it didn't have any of the walls, it didn't have some of the concrete floors, it didn't have a roof, and the very first time we did it, it was a northerly storm and it poured with rain. We had to turn the volume up to be able to hear ourselves, and at the end of the evening none of the gear got wet, so we decided that we'd never have to cancel, which we haven't. Took up guitar when I was 20 and saxophone when I was 33. So I played sax for 30 years with various bands, and more recently have gone back to the guitar. Rain or shine, we always have a market, and I've met some wonderful people from Hokitika right through to Karamea who come. Very social occasion because all the locals come to the market, and a lot of the locals come to the jam nights. And on the west coast, on a dark Wednesday night, I tell you there's probably not a lot happening elsewhere. The meetings that we have, I was very surprised, the very first one, at how polite everybody was and how well informed they were and how they presented things at meetings, and they're a great bunch of people. It's a wonderful bit of land, and it is really worthwhile to protect it as an entire piece of land rather than having it carved up and other things done to it than just letting the natural bush grow. And they all feel very protective about this chunk of land. For the first 6 years I did glass blowing, and I was able to survive very well doing that. And then when the pension came along, I was very happy to receive that and slacken off my work. I've got 3 children, one who's in Melbourne and has been there for a long time. He's been here with his girlfriend. My second son, he comes here with his 2 children, and my daughter, she comes here with her children. My place was in Christchurch, has always been the hotel for the West Coast people. When they come to Christchurch, they stay with me. Ross, Billy, haven't had any of the ladies stay with me, but Ross and Billy have stayed with me a lot, and that kept up the contact. Plus I used to come to visit every year. I used to come and stay for long weekends looking after Billy's place when he was in Thailand, collecting his mail and paying the bills and mowing his lawns. Painted his house. So that friendship runs deep. Billy and I have known each other for about 48 years. So that's probably the longest friendship I've ever had. I did do a trip with him and Nicola in their horse-drawn caravan, where we came from Springs Junction. I joined them at Springs Junction, and we came to the West Coast over the Rahu Saddle and down through Reefton and out through Greymouth 36, 37, 38 years ago. And Svarahama, he was a great mate and always interesting to stay with, because he'd harness up the horse to his sledge and we'd go down to the beach and collect rata. It had to be rata. I've got Wi-Fi. Yeah. And I haven't got a television. I haven't had one since I came here. So I do a lot more reading and gardening and painting and doing things around the house, and not having my mind filled by the rubbish that's on TV.